discussion. So we have another series of questions on sort of the criminal justice system. So how can we fix the justice system so that repeat offenders are kept off our streets and we can reduce crime? Is the provincial government going to do anything about provincial judges? This is sometimes a federal issue, specifically some type of mandate for provincial judges on repeat offenders and catch and release. Someone had the helpful suggestion: has the government thought about implementing a 3-strike system for prolific addict offenders, such as you are caught 3 times drunk in public or somehow intoxicated and you go to jail or rehab? So I might take editorial license here and suggest maybe this is a good chance to talk a little bit about Minister Williams and the recovery model. I think it would fit into some of these, but happy to turn that over to talk about some of these public safety issues.
Well, thanks, Brandon. I'd like to have a lifeline. I'll throw that one over to Scott Sinclair, just to start, because he's doing a lot in the policing world, and he's begun to see what's possible and what's not. But I do think that it begins with having a local police force that's responsive to the individual community. So why don't I get you to start there?
This is a great question, and I actually have some special guests here today, and I didn't mention them earlier, but this is top of mind for our area. I attended the RCMP Town Hall. This is one of the issues that are definitely top 3 to 5. I've spent the majority of our spring session lobbying both the Premier, Minister Ellis, Minister Nixon on the encampments and the challenges there that I was facing our communities. So I've spent a lot of energy and time on this. But Citizens on Patrol is right over here if you guys want to wave. My special guest today. This is a good example of a group of people that, to me, one of the reasons I run is my family. My grandfather, Mushum, brought me up with an idea that those who step forward do the work. And we've become a society where it's become really easy to type a couple lines on Facebook or Twitter and then never look at it. And in small towns, oftentimes it's the same group of 5 or 20 people that are carrying the load here and sit on 5 or 6 different boards. Many of them are in this room, but this group of people advocated to all the right places. My office raised hell with town council in a very positive way, but to me, it's one thing to identify the issues, but it's another to volunteer your own time to try making positive impact in your community. And they've been going around cleaning up some of the encampment areas after they've been deserted, but also trying to stand guard at nighttime, and that's why I invited them as my guest today. But outside of that, one of the takeaways from the town hall was they did this presentation that reminded me very much of what I see lots of times in government, that is both frustrating and nonsensical, it seems. And it was over describing some of the solutions for our public safety challenges and crime challenges was citizens spending more money and business people spending more money on security cameras, locks, better locks, and oddly enough, I didn't know this until a couple days ago, but trimming our shrubs and trimming our trees eventually is supposed to be a large deterrent for crime, which I didn't have a chance to speak the other day on camera. If I did, I would have brought up how the RCMP, Minister Ellis would say this, and I've heard him say it numerous times, they're flat out short human beings. They're short 400 officers, give or take, in our province that we all pay for as citizens out of the 2,000 roughly, and that's millions of dollars a year. So when they don't hire them, we don't get that money back. My suggestion the other day would have been, give us the $1 million back, and then we'll go buy the shrub trimming services and the security services. But Minister Ellis has passed through Bill 11 this spring session, which is an important thing that'll do 2 things. I try not to bullshit you guys on actual results. When it comes to crime, until the federal government reverses or eliminate, or hopefully have a new federal conservative government, we won't see any realistic changes, I don't think, that we notice until they get rid of this nonsensical Bill C-75. Prime Minister Trudeau went on camera 2 months ago and doubled down in front of Global CTV and said, criminals need mental health, not jail. And it's nonsensical. Now I say this, with a full heart, and both the Premier and Brandon Lunty heard me advocate for mental health supports and recovery and help with Indigenous people. I was proud to get money for the homeless shelter. Honestly, my mom cried when I phoned her to tell her. But there has to be a balance between common sense law and order and compassion. And we don't have that right now. So I think we need to reestablish that, flip that federal law, and then Bill 11 here will help. We're going to be able to take repeat offenders and put ankle bracelets on them, which is helpful, but will make at least some of these repeat offenders' lives uncomfortable. But I'm very direct about telling people that until that federal law is changed, we won't see the kind of change that we're hoping for in the streets. But that's one thing. Bill 11 will also do a very important thing with the sheriffs, which is we're going to train them and properly resource their department so that they can perform the same duties as regular officers, so that if the RCMP can't send officers or can't recruit them to our most remote and rural areas, which lots of times are Indigenous or Northern Alberta, the first people to lose an officer are the most remote areas. But if they can't do that, Minister Ellis would be the first one to say he doesn't care what the front of the jersey says. When someone calls 911, someone should answer. And I 100% agree with them. And if we have to send in the sheriffs, I'm pretty confident both the Premier and Minister Ellis are going to make sure that in the next couple of years, we're not going to just sit on our hands and wait for the federal government to figure this out. So, thank you.
Thanks for that, Scott. So Scott's quite right. We have limitations, and when an officer in Ontario was murdered, that's when Doug Ford asked all of the premiers to get together to change Bill C-75, which is the one that Scott was mentioning, and they did change it. So essentially, they're supposed to have a reverse onus. If you're a really, really bad dude, you're supposed to, instead of just being assumed that they'll let you out, you have to argue why they keep you in. It was supposed to be the other way. You have to argue why you should be let out. And that hasn't been enough because, quite frankly, the person who killed the county official a couple of weeks ago, he was out on his own recognizance, having been apprehended a short time before by police. So that is the culture that we have, is this catch and release. And these guys are really, really bad dudes, and they're going out doing terrible things. And some of the worst offenders are prolific. And so you end up with a small number of people causing a massive amount of carnage. So we're going to continue to push that at the federal level. In the meantime, we have, as Scott has indicated, we're 400 officers short on RCMP, and there may be lots of reasons why the RCMP is having a hard time recruiting. I won't comment on that, but what I can tell you is we're not having the same problem recruiting the sheriffs. We used to do 2 training classes a year of 30 officers. I'm now told that we're doing 6 or 7 classes a year of 30 officers. And part of the reason is that when we recruit, we say, hey, you want to live in high level, then we will recruit and train you and you will go and be deployed in high level. That's where your job will be. And so people are coming to the job knowing where they're going to be posted, and they want to work in that community. That's their first choice. The other thing is we're having them do really important policing work. The ankle bracelets is one aspect. We have them doing the scan. The scan team is shutting down drug houses. Our surveillance team is working on tracking down folks who are engaging in crime. And we also have a fugitive apprehension team. I know it's been a bit unsung, and I do want to see a few more stories on it. But our northern fugitive apprehension team since December has got 125 people who have been on multiple warrants. These are guys who should be behind bars. We get them behind bars, and then we're able to detain them. The other aspect that we're doing is we're hiring more justices of the peace, and we're trying to move to an approach where you only get bail at a bail hearing before justice of the peace. Why is that? Because we appoint those guys, and so we're able to appoint those who share our same values about the need to have a reverse onus and take that seriously. So that's one of the models that we're moving towards, to have a little bit more control over who gets left out. And we are also developing a special prosecution team so that these really bad guys can be kept behind bars, and we're putting the resources of our Crown Prosecutor to work with the officers that are apprehending to make sure that they are kept behind bars as well. So that's what we're doing on the policing side. But Scott's quite right. I mean, there's 2 different aspects. There are those who are vulnerable and addicted and have mental health issues, who are victims of the same bad guys that the rest of us are. And so we've got to differentiate those who are out there causing mayhem, causing crime, threatening people, stealing. Those are the ones we've got to take a criminal approach for. Those who are the victims, who need help with their mental health and their addiction, we have lots of opportunities to give them access into the system. We started in Calgary and Edmonton with what we thought was going to just be a pilot project, which was our navigation center. So as we cleared encampments, we had a place for people to go, and then they were able to walk through the 10 different services that they needed. So they were able to get their ID, and they were able to sleep it off if they were under the influence. They were able to stay with their dogs, so we could find a place for them to be able to get a pet-friendly apartment. We were able to connect them to shelter, connect them to housing, transitional housing, connect them to the virtual opioid dependency program so they could have a replacement for opioids. If they had frostbite, get them treatment. If they needed other medical care, get them that all in one place. We've never done this before. And word got out. In those first couple of weeks, we served 200 people out of the encampments. In the last 6 months, we've served 3,000 people. And so we've extended that into Calgary. And part of the reason we're focusing on Calgary and Edmonton is we don't want to just push the problem out back into the rural communities. We want to be able to solve the problem where it is so that hopefully they'll have less spillover, is what we're seeing out in the rural communities. So the next phase of that is there's some really hardcore mental health and addiction patients who really do need to be ordered into care. And that will be the last step in the process, we think, in being able to have that holistic care. We've got a recovery community in Red Deer, a recovery community in Lethbridge. We just opened up a recovery community in Gunn. And these are folks who are going in and they have up to a year to be able to get jobs, training skills, learn life skills, get reconnected and make amends with family and community, and be able to get out and hopefully on a pathway to permanent recovery. I went to the one in Gunn and I met some guys who'd just been discharged from corrections. So we have 4 correctional facilities. Those are the guys who are serving 2 years less a day, so our provincial facilities are in remand. And we've created therapeutic living units. This is drug treatment actually within our prisons. We've got 4 of them. And the guys in there, this is the first time anyone's told them that they care about them. First time they've been able to express emotion. They go in a really hardcore group session, and they have to be honest with each other and look at each other in the eyes and say what they did to their families and friends. And I can tell you, they fall in love with recovery. They believe that is the pathway to be able to pay it forward. And I've met many, many people where we are breaking the cycle of addiction. So those are, I don't want you to think that there's nothing we can do. There's a lot we can do. But we're really only about a year into the implementation of some of the recovery community programs and some of the things that we're talking about. So just give us a little bit more time. We still need to figure out how we bring this model to the smaller communities, the mid-sized communities, because we have to do it a little bit of a different way. And it may be that we rely on those 5 to 25 people that you say, Scott, do everything in the community to help us build something similar so that we can have a similar outcome.
Thank you, Premier. Just before I go back to Brandon, I actually have a suggestion or idea that I think is practical and might work. When I first started speaking about these recovery communities, especially to the Indigenous communities, they all wanted one. Put one here, put one here. I know that there might be an opportunity that Capilano, just by GRUAR, was able to get some federal funding specifically for a smaller one, I think, geared to youth. So I think the idea of having smaller ones right inside these First Nations communities might help. But I think the bigger thing would be investing some money in logistics and transportation. I know a big challenge here is getting people to and from appointments on the healthcare side, but I think if we were able to have a center where people could check in and then provide them the transportation and the resources to the recovery centers in Grand Prairie or Edmonton, because what we found out with the homeless shelter is we just can't offer the level of support here locally. We're too small, and it just didn't go the way we wanted practically. And then, like I said, I lobbied to get the funding. I said it on TV in front of town council at a council meeting 4 or 5 months ago that if this doesn't go the way we want it, we can change course. But it's my belief after talking to a lot of people now that we do need to be able to provide like a milk run of all the small communities and maybe a subsidized transportation program, because the Greyhound doesn't exist anymore and there's no private business case for it. I think that private bus companies going under here locally, and if we were able to provide some funding and have kind of a blended transportation Greyhound model to the bigger communities where the service is offered, we'd have a real good chance. Because the other issue that I found out from some of the smaller First Nations communities is it gets them away from their peer group. That's negative. If we could find that balance between making them feel like they're not alone when they go away to treatment, I think we'd have a better shot at really, making a dent in this. Because I didn't mean to sound, so heavy-handed on the crime side. You know how much I believe in the recovery part of it. So I think it's finding that delicate balance between what we're trying to do, but like a common sense, practical solution for it, and not, whatever they call they're doing now. Because the fluffy pictures and the safe supply, everyone in here can see it. It's not working anywhere. It's not working in Vancouver. It's not working around the legislature in downtown Edmonton. We have to do something better. But thank you.
And Scott, you'd love going to Gun, because I can tell you one of the guys that I met, in the corrections unit, it is hardcore work. They're up at 7 in the morning, and they're busy in programming all day until 9 o'clock at night. And they chose to be from the Lethbridge Correction Center into Gun, which is quite a distance, because they want that intensity of the program. And one of the guys said, well, what am I going to do if I've only got 4 hours of programming? I'm going to be on my phone, and I'm going to call bad people for me. So I may as well be here working on myself and being with people who are doing the same thing as well. It's actually an amazing experience. And I think you can see how it works in Gun, because it's more of a cottage, each individual cottages with the central living area. And we're trying to make it a holistic experience where people can be out in nature. It may well be that looking at how they do it there, that we can imagine something in this region that is going to work a little bit better.
I can't. I'll go see it for sure. That's great. I was just going to say, I always say that these challenges. Lots of people talk about root causes, but to me, it's not one. There's no silver bullet solution. It's probably 10 things, but we have to try as many as once. I've said this 10 things so much that now Mayor Frankie Ward steals it and uses it everywhere she goes. I'm just joking. But part of the other challenge, I think, is like what you said, is keeping them busy you take care of the mental health in the morning, but in some of the Indigenous communities that could work was, cutting wood or traditional practices. And then hopefully that could phase into some sort of a trade wind style program that they have in Edmonton, where they're actually building tiny homes as well, because you could be solving problems where we're finding the skilled workers we don't have here, and we're building houses, and it's sort of a cyclical idea. So I think having, I don't know if halfway housing, but supports when they come out of the treatment inside the communities, that blend the mental health with using your hands and occupying, because it's tough to get in your own head if you're cutting wood or sweating all day. That's what I tell people too. So some sort of combination of the two things, I think would have a positive result. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks guys. Well, speaking of guns, we have some firearm questions here.